Good afternoon. This is Dr. Anamta Rizvi, and I hope everybody can hear me, see me, everything is good, audible, visible. Just please let me know in the comment section quickly. So before I go ahead with this very interesting, unique and special class, I would just like to tell you that this is for the first time in the history of StudyIQ IES classes that today हम लोग paid class YouTube पे कर रहे हैं so that all our students can have a very real-time experience and get all the information they need कि paid classes कैसे होती हैं, what kind of content we give on our paid classes, किस तरह पढ़ाया जाता है, what is the pedagogy, क्या methodology होती है, किस तरह से हम लोग आपको notes समझाते हैं, कैसे content देते हैं. So today, this is the reason that we all are taking our paid classes on a YouTube platform, which is completely free for all my students. Before I go ahead, I'm really waiting for everyone to let me know. Okay. So excellent. So I think everything is good. You guys can hear me, see me, and let me in the comment section that if everything is fine. So okay. So let's go ahead with the class, guys. Now today we are doing a very important and interesting lesson. We are done. We are through with Mill on the Floss by George Eliot, the Victorian age era poet, author, novelist. That is the Victorian times, the 19th century. A quintessential female author. However, her real name was Mary Ann Evans, but she took on this name, George Eliot, just to have the garb of a male author so that she's taken seriously. This is exactly the point that at that time, even female authors were not considered important and significant enough to be studied. So George Eliot was the one to make a very revolutionary change in the perspective of female authors that were perceived in the Victorian era. Now हम लोगों ने जितने मेरे सारे पेज स्टूडेंट्स हैं, they will of course get to know कि हम लोगों ने जितना भी हमारे 7 parts में Mill on the Floss divided है, 6 parts हमने कर लिए हैं. This is the last part of the book, that is book 7th, the final rescue. So let's go ahead and see that how we are going ahead with this class. All right. Moving ahead, guys. So अभी तक हम लोग ने पढ़ा था that Maggie, the main author, the main characters over here, Maggie, Tom, Lucy, Stephen Guest, Phillips, all these are the main characters. इनके इर्द गिर्द सारा का सारा हमारा novel चल रहा है. The debacle, the devastation of the Tulliver family, जहाँ पे मैगी और टॉम दोनों भाई बहन थे, उनका किस तरह से उनका financial crisis हुआ. Maggie, a very witty, intelligent, bright girl, full of energy, vitality, but जैसे ही वो बड़े होती है, because of the financial crisis and the fact कि कुछ उसको affection नहीं मिला enough, उसको कोई समझ नहीं पाया, she mellows down. However, in this adulthood, she grows up to be a very beautiful woman, intelligent, smart, wise. But एक angle में फंस जाती है, and that is that she gets attracted and to her brother-in-law. The brother-in-law also gets attracted to her to be a would-be brother-in-law, जो कि Lucy का husband होता है. Now taking the book from there, Maggie has completely said a no to Stephen Guest, that no, I will not go ahead. क्यों? क्योंकि उसने morally वो moral duty करेगी, and she will not go ahead and betray her sister, betray her cousin Lucy. And this is the reason that we're going ahead with this book 7. यहाँ पे सारे resolution हो गए, आखिरी book है, and we will get to see that how things go forward. All right. So book summary, book 7, chapter 1, the return to the mill, Tom at Dorlcote Mill. We're talking about Tom over here, and we get to see Tom Tulliver. Just a second, guys. Let me just. Tom Tulliver is now the master of the mill. तो जो मिल खो गई थी डॉलकॉट मिल, and जिसकी वजह से उनके फादर की भी डेथ हो गई थी, मिस्टर टलिवर की, फाइनली टॉम को मिल गई है. टॉम ने इसको रिगेन कर लिया है, एंड ही स्टैंड्स इन स्टर्न साइलेंस अवेटिंग सम इनएविटेबल डिस्ग्रेस. बॉब जैकिन, जो कि बहुत ही अच्छा बचपन का फ्रेंड होता है टॉम का, ऑलवेज सपोर्टेड हिम, हैज ऑलरेडी टोल्ड हिम दैट मैगी लैंडेड एट मडपॉट विद स्टीफन गेस्ट, एंड टॉम प्रिपेयर्स हिमसेल्फ फॉर द वर्स्ट स्कैंडल, नॉट ट्रेजेडी. सो नाउ Maggie has reached the Mudpot Hill where Tom was waiting for him. Now Maggie's return and Tom's rejection. Maggie returns home physically and emotionally broken because over here Stephen Guest को उसने completely मना कर दिया that no, I definitely cannot go ahead with you because moral duty है, morally, ethically I cannot be a part of your life considering that you are already engaged to my cousin. But Tom, cold and unforgiving, repudiates her completely. He accuses her of moral ruin, deceit, and betrayal of Lucy and Philip. Though Maggie insists on her struggle and repentance, Tom cruelly declares that the sight of her is hateful. Now, Tom has a very strong idea that uska, whatever the love triangle that was created between Stephen, Lucy, and Maggie, that has come to a debacle, that has come to a very bad end. And Tom कह रहा है कि ये गलत हुआ है because you betrayed. Now nobody is there to understand Maggie, that the sacrifice that Maggie is doing. Again over here Maggie को question किया जा रहा है despite no fault of hers. She was not the one to rekindle this affair. She was not the one to go ahead. It was Stephen जो कि Maggie को persuade कर रहा था, persuasively बोलता रहता था that be a part of my life, be with me. However, Maggie vehemently refused. However, over here again we see the gender discrimination, जहाँ पे the woman is being the subject of humiliation. यहाँ पे the woman is being the center of humiliation, saying that you were the one who dragged this affair and तुम इस triangle में आई, betray किया Lucy को and Philip को. कौन accuse करा है? Tom Tolliver, Maggie's brother. Then moving ahead to the next one, a mother's unfailing love. As Maggie walks away in despair, of course she's devastated because Tom का validation, Tom का उसका side में रहना बहुत ज़रूरी है. This is the reason Tom की वजह से he did not go ahead and marry Philip, because Tom was against that. Now Tom is the one who is against her, and her mother runs to her. Just a second. Her mother runs to her and embraces her with simple, unconditional love. Though Mrs. Tulliver is frightened and helpless, she decides to go with the daughter even when Tom offers her money and asks her to return. But over here, the mother comes to rescue, and she is the one. So far, Mrs. Tulliver का कोई important role नहीं था, but towards the end, we get to see that yes, Mrs. Tulliver कहीं ना कहीं Maggie को समझने लगी थी. And she gets to know कि इसमें Maggie की कोई गलती नहीं थी. And she comes an unconditional love. Okay, that can only be given by the mother. And she is the one who comes and hugs Maggie, tries to tell her that I stand with you, I understand you. Tom, despite Tom saying that, you return back to me, but the mother stands firm that no, I'll be with Maggie. Shelter at Bob Jarkin. Mother and daughter go to the home of Bob Jarkin, Maggie's childhood friend, and Bob, now married with a baby named Maggie, welcomes them with kindness and respect, showing the loyalty and understanding that family has denied. Bob's silence and care embody a deeper chivalry than words. Now, Maggie and the mother, they both are completely alone. And now Bob Jarkin, जो उनका childhood friend था, वो साथ देता है. And Bob named her daughter also Maggie. Now, Maggie's grief and grace, while Mrs. Tulliver returns briefly to the mill, Maggie is left all alone in the sitting room. Bob brings the baby and gently offers Maggie the companionship of Mums, his faithful dog. When he asks whether she holds a grudge, Maggie replies that she cannot because she has done wrong too often. Her humility shines no bitterness, only a desire to make amends. Over here, we can see कि कितना ज़्यादा Maggie, she's grown up to be a very wise woman, a very intellectual, intelligent person. And she's like that, I don't have any grudges against my family or against my brother, क्योंकि मैंने बहुत गलत proof किया है अपने आप को, and I have not proven that that I care for my family enough. And she's like, I just want कि चीज़ें बेहतर हो जाए. A very something that, again, a very gendered thing where the women are just completely going ahead with it and taking care of things, trying to amend things in the family. Again, if we look at the analysis of this book, now always जो भी हम लोग book पढ़ते हैं, हम लोग chapter by chapters का analysis करते हैं, क्योंकि यही analysis है जो हमें deeper understanding देता है chapter की. Okay, so if we look at the analysis, then Tom's morality versus Maggie's conscience. This is a very important point, guys. Tom is a moral absolutist, unyielding, punitive, and concerned with appearances and right conduct as judged by the society. Maggie, by contrast, undergoes a deep moral reckoning, marked not by fear of disgrace, but by inward penitence and longing to restore what her failure has broken. So over here, we can say Tom's morality versus morals conscience. Now, Tom's morality is very rigid. It is right and wrong. But in this life, in this world, the life that we live, it cannot be black and white. It's shades of gray. Maggie falls in the shades of gray criteria. She has done wrong, but she's ready to amend. So over here, we can see by contrast that he's unyielding, unforgiving, non-flexible, very rigid. On the other hand, Maggie She wants her conscience to be clear. So Maggie, by contrast, undergoes a deep moral reckoning. She recognizes herself, her feelings, her ideas, her future, what she has done wrong, and she's ready कि उसको माफी मांग के उसको changes लाए. Then you have forgiveness as human redemption. Eliot juxtaposes Tom's moral coldness with the warm instinct embrace of Mrs. Tulliver and the loyal kindness of Bob Jackson. That is forgiveness as human redemption, जहाँ पे Bob Jackson is along with Maggie कि उसने forgive कर दिया. The power of ordinary goodness. Over here again we see Bob Jackson being a very ordinary character, but uska goodness at that point of time comes out as the biggest solace, biggest relief to Maggie and the mother. They are the ones, it is just simple act of kindness, but Bob Jackson comes out as a hero over here. Then you have next, Maggie's strength in submission. Over here, we think yahan pe who is the one who is actually winning? It is not Tom. Tom is unyielding and inflexible, very rigid. But over here, Maggie अपने अपने silence के साथ, अपने strength, submission के साथ, she's proving herself to be very strong in character, irony and justice. That Maggie, who never intended betrayal, suffers shame and exile, while Stephen escapes scrutiny. Stephen was the one who was after Maggie. And it was not Maggie. लेकिन यहाँ पे Maggie को interrogate किया जाता है, Stephen को नहीं. And again, the gender politics comes into play of the Victorian era, जो कि इतना discrimination रखते थे male and female में. In this chapter, Eliot deepens Maggie's tragedy, but also reveals her moral greatness. Morally, she's upright, she's righteous in the true sense, and she has that power to forgive and move on. Now, next chapter, we are coming ahead to books, that is book 7, chapter 2. St. Aug's passes judgment. Public condemnation. Maggie's return alone without marriage or social endorsement makes her guilty in the eyes of St. Aug. The townspeople, especially the women, judge not by more intention but by outcome. Now, had she returned as Mrs. Stephen Guest, even under scandalous circumstances, society would have forgiven and romanticized it. But as she returns unmarried in disgrace, she becomes cautionary tale. Over here again, we see that when she comes back, everyone is gossiping about her, talking about her. Fallen woman. Woman who has disgraced herself, woman who has dishonored herself, despite not being Maggie's fault. Now, over here, we again see the hypocrisy of societies across the globe. अगर लड़की के साथ कुछ गलत होता है, तो it is always a woman who is blamed. The men that go scot-free. Over here, it is again the same thing. Nobody is questioning Stephen. Nobody is asking question, but it is Maggie, जिसको everybody is looking down upon. Then you have the world's wife. Eliot satirizes public opinion as the world's wife, a figure of gossip, hypocrisy, and superficial virtue. World's wife is like, everybody's talking about her. She is the subject of gossip. She is the subject of scandal. Everyone is making stories about it. Maggie is seen not only as a seductress who betrayed her cousin, but also someone physically marked for moral downfall. एक तो everyone is talking कि इसने अपनी sister को, अपने cousin को betray किया, but this is not the truth. Maggie was the one to resist. Stephen was the one to pursue. But the same society that once praised her now sees her presence as dangerous to daughters. Now everyone is looking that she is dangerous to daughters. She is somebody to be kept away from daughters. So जो society ने इसको इतना ज़्यादा ऊपर किया था, अब वही society, she is looking down upon her. Maggie's private suffering, in contrast to this public cruelty, Maggie is consumed by remorse, guilt, and worry for Stephen, Lucy, and Philip. Maggie, on the other hand, of course, वो चुपचाप ये सब झेल रही है. She's not mentioning it to anyone. She knows what is the truth. But is she going ahead and talking about Stephen? नहीं. वो Stephen के बारे में बात नहीं कर रही है. She knows, but she's worrying about these people. Tom's rejection has left her raw, and she seeks no vindication, only the sense to live rightly. She just wants to live a rightfully respectable life, that is all. But that is so hard to get. She begins thinking practically, supporting herself with suing and remaining in St. Aug's to demonstrate her repentance. Maggie's meeting with Dr. Kenn. Again, Dr. Kenn एक बहुत ही छोटा character निभाते हैं book में, but a very important and very crucial one. So Maggie walks through the town facing cold stares and public insult. She finally reaches Dr. Kenn, who listens to her confession with grave kindness. He believes in her integrity and explains, although he sees her return as a moral triumph, the world will still punish her with false judgment. So Dr. Kenn, आज की तारीख में हम लोग बोलेंगे as a therapist. He worked as a therapist for her. Matlab, he was not a therapist, but he was the one to understand her very completely, thoroughly, and make sure that, and be with her at that time. So now advice and resolution, Dr. Kenn क्या कहते हैं? Dr. Kenn gently suggests that Maggie might consider taking a situation elsewhere to avoid social torment. So he's giving it a very right suggestion that you move ahead, go somewhere, live somewhere else. But Maggie, with quiet resolve, insists on staying, not to resist gossip, but to show the truth of her repentance and regain moral ground in her own eyes. So she's like that, no, I'm not going to go anywhere. यहीं रहूंगी, यहीं पे लोग देखेंगे कि मैं repent कर रही हूँ, and I'm not going to escape. Escapism मतलब क्या होगा कि strengthening the belief कि कुछ गलत किया है. I will live here and I will suffer whatever, जो भी मुझे endure करना है मैं endure करूंगी. Dr. Kenn promises his support both personally as well as her priest. Okay, so as a priest, somebody she can confess and confide her secrets, talk her heart out, and Dr. Kenn promises her to be there. And if you look at the analysis of this chapter, the cruelty of public morality, so we can see the hypocrisy of the Victorian era, how they are demeaning, questioning a young girl. Even if one little scandal is completely ruining her future, कोई उसका future का कुछ भी नहीं है, and she is now considered as a fallen woman, a disgraced, humiliated, and she's looked down upon. बोला जा रहा है कि just make sure that she's kept away from the daughters. And then gendered hypocrisy. Is Stephen being questioned? Not at all. Is Stephen being subject to humiliation? Not at all. But it is Maggie. But was it Maggie only the one who was in this confusion, in this affair? Not at all. Stephen, again, I'm repeatedly saying Stephen was the one to pursue Maggie, but this is gendered hypocrisy, jahan pe women are being subjected to such kind of accusations, and the male person involved in the relationship is not questioned at all. Then you have Dr. Kenn as moral counterpoint. Again, as I mentioned, कि Dr. Kent is the one जो कि पूरी book का एक moral compass संभाल रहे हैं. तो वो आते हैं, he comes towards the end of the chapter, but he is the one to even inform the readers that what is it. So Dr. Kenn is the voice of reason, spiritual depth and Christian compassion. Unlike Tom or the world's why जो इसको बोला जाता है, he understands that morality cannot be measured by formula alone. So everyone has the moral compass, guys. Everything is not right and wrong. अगर हम लोग morality की बात करें, this can be a very good question in your UPSC exam as well, ethics paper के लिए भी, आपके English literature optional subject जो हम लोग पढ़ रहे हैं उसके लिए भी, that how morality can be judged in terms of the human condition. किस तरह से हम लोग बात कर सकते हैं morality के? क्या morality का एक कोई छोटा compass होता है? No. Morality is different for everyone, and जो story आपकी होगी morally, that story might be completely different for the other person. So over here, Dr. Kenn as a moral counterpoint, जहाँ पे वो बात कर रहा है कि कुछ गलत या सही नहीं है, but it is shades of grey. Moral complexity in Eliot's philosophy. The final paragraph meditates on the limits of moral maxims. Eliot conscious against judging others by rigid rules, calling instead for insight and sympathy. Let me tell you one thing. क्योंकि Victorian era is considered one of the most an age जहाँ पे class consciousness बहुत थी, बहुत hypocrisy थी, बहुत pretense था. Gender discrimination immense tha. Women were considered very different from men, not in terms of anything else, but in terms के domestic sphere उनके साथ रहेगा सारा honor उनके पास है, respectability is associated with women in every which way. Male were always protected, no questions, nothing. So Eliot wrote this book also एक डायडैक्टिक लिटरेचर की तरह से, जहाँ पे सीख दी उसने एंड के चैप्टर में कि कैसे मॉरल कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी और इलियट अपनी फिलॉसफी के दैट लिमिट ऑफ मॉरल मैक्सिम इलियट कॉशियस अगेंस्ट जजिंग अदर्स बाय रिजिड रूल्स. जजमेंट जो हम लोग प्रेजुडिसेस या जो जजमेंट रखते हैं अदर्स के लिए, दैट नीड्स टू बी कंट्रोल्ड. कॉलिंग इंस्टेड फॉर इंसाइट एंड सिंपैथी. Before judging, she is extremely being very didactic over here and saying कि it's important to have that insight, समझो दूसरे की बात को एक अलग तरीके से, and sympathy, have compassion for the other person, try to empathize with the other person and see why she did that, how she did that, or what was the reason behind it. This reflects a broader literary aim to portray real human struggles, and Maggie's heroism, Maggie's decision to stay, knowing that she will be humiliated, is very strong. Easiest way was to run away from there, avoid everyone, and but she chooses the harder path, but the right path. because she is not wrong. Next, you have book 7, Chapter 3, showing that old acquaintances are capable of surprising us. Mrs. Glegg's unexpected defense. Now, surprisingly, Aunt Glegg emerges as Maggie's first public defender in the family. When Tom initially condemns Maggie, Mrs. Glegg reproaches him, insisting that family loyalty should outweigh social judgment until deniable proof exists. Once Stephen's letter reaches them confirming Maggie's innocence, she takes pride in defending her niece. Now, finally, what happens over here is Mrs. Glegg, जो कि अभी तक इसकी maternal aunt, इसकी मासी थी, अभी तक she was very much against Maggie. उसको हमेशा हर चीज में टोकती थी, condemn करती थी. But over here, when Tom is against Maggie, तो Mrs. Glegg, the one who was always against her, stands with Maggie और कहती हैं कि please, you need to stand with Maggie because जो भी social judgment है, that should just not stand when it comes to family loyalty. And उसके बाद जब स्टीफन का लेटर आता है बताने के लिए that Maggie is innocent, Maggie ने कुछ नहीं किया, तब Mrs. Glegg is also happy about this. Tom's inflexibility, despite Mrs. Glegg's stance, Tom remains cold. He has judged Maggie based on years of perceived instability and rebellion. His anger, though painful to him, is unmoved by external voices. Eliot reminds us that tolerance depends on the capacity to see beyond oneself, something that Tom lacks. So Tom lacks that inside. Tom कि जो गुस्सा है मैगी की तरफ सिर्फ ये इस एपिसोड से नहीं है, बट उसका जो इम्पल्सिवनेस थी, उसकी जो उसका जो रिबेलियन था, जो हमेशा से रिबेलियस स्ट्रीक उसमें उसने देखी है. सो ही इज अपसेट विद बिकॉज ऑफ दैट ऑल्सो, दैट व्हाई इज शी लाइक दैट. What is the reason that she's like that? Okay, so Tom is inflexible in that manner. Maggie's suffering and strength. Maggie is humbled and broken. She refuses any charity or dependence, though grateful. She insists on her own living, seeking advice only from Dr. Kenn. So Maggie का strength हम लोग देख सकते हैं. Maggie is very strong. She is again living all by herself, refusing any help from anyone. Philip's letter, emotional and redemptive. Philip, the one who Maggie and Philip, they both loved each other very, very much. But किसकी वजह से अलग होते हैं? Because only of Tom. Because Tom never agreed कि Philip Wakem से शादी हो. Now finally Philip writes, his letter is an outpouring of belief, forgiveness and love. Okay, so ये end आ रहा है and we can see कि Philip is also understanding Maggie. He assures Maggie she was never doubted. He recognizes her inner struggle and finds it a source of spiritual strength. So Philip is also on her side. He renounces any claim over her, offering only unconditional affection, which brings Maggie both anguish and solace. So abhi tak so far Philip was also pursuing Maggie to marry, but अब वो कहता है that I will not show any right on you. It's only pure affection. Selflessly, I will be your companion and there's no strings attached. I will not be pursuing you for marriage. And Maggie is very happy and relieved and of course sad, because ultimately she also had strong feelings for Philip. But because only for Tom, she never took that step. Maggie's final cry, Philip's words pierce Maggie's conscience as she weeps with the letter pressed to her whispered prayer, oh God, is there any happiness in love that could make me forget their pain? Okay, so this is a very beautiful, strong line, encapsulates her inner turmoil. Love as joy is inconceivable when causes suffering to others. So it's like love as joy. So there are many aspects to love. And love over here comes out with a lot of suffering. And this is exactly what Maggie talks about. So if we analyze this chapter, moral vision versus social judgment, Mrs. Glegg ka jo unexpected support illustrates the tension between rigid morality and intuitive fairness. Mrs. Glegg, still family, जो एक intuitive fairness थी कि Maggie ये नहीं कर सकती है. She trusted that. ना कि वो सोशल जजमेंट में जाके उसको गिल्टी फील करा रही है और उसको शी इज डिक्लेयरिंग हर एज अ क्रिमिनल. Philip's letter as ethical counterpoint. Over here, Philip's letter is a masterclass in compassionate love. This is actually selfless love. Philip, who has shown a lot of consistency in love. Philip, throughout the book, has been very compassionate, affectionate towards Maggie, जो कि Maggie हमेशा से चाहती थी. But ultimately, she does not get married. Why? Only because of Tom. But जिसका letter है, that is like the epitome of love. इससे ज़्यादा nobody can express unconditional love. And that stands at it. Eliot's ethical world, this is real heroism, love that renounces its own reward. So now, Eliot saying that ultimately Philip comes out as a very great hero. क्योंकि he is renouncing his love. He's like, I'm letting you go. I love you, but I'm letting you go, and you are free to go. I will not pursue. So this is a very heroic thing to do, a very brave thing to do. Maggie's spiritual conflict. Maggie is tormented, of course, because does she want to bring pain to any of the family members, to Philip? Not at all. But वो कुछ कर नहीं सकती. Maggie remains tormented by what has happened, but by idea that love, even innocent, can bring harm. So it's like that, मैंने तो innocently, I loved everyone innocently, but the harm that it caused, her whispered cry shows that for her, the pain of others outweighs the fulfillment of romantic desire. Love as a double-edged sword. Again, we can say that, love is basically, both Stephen and Philip love Maggie, but only Philip's love expands to encompass self-denial, self-sacrifice, something that you can let go. And that is love. That is what it is being talked about. Power of language and silence. The chapter pivots on letters and unsaid words. Philip's letter is redemptive, offering Maggie a mirror of faith and understanding. ये जो letter था, this was very important for Maggie, because at least there are some genuine people जो कि Maggie के साथ खड़े हैं, उसको समझ रहे हैं. So this is one of the most emotionally led chapters, where family, rigidity, personal ethics, and redemptive love all collide in Maggie's journey towards self-forgiveness and moral clarity. अगर ये letter ना मिलता, अगर Mrs. Glegg उस पे भरोसा ना करते, अगर Stephen वो letter ना लिखता, तो she would be forcing herself all the, you can say, punishment upon herself. वो बिल्कुल forgive ना कर पाती अपने आप को भी. Now, next we are coming to chapter 4. Maggie and Lucy gossip against Maggie continues despite Dr. Kenn's support and Stephen's letter clearing Maggie. Society.org. The townspeople, especially the women, cling to slander safeguard of society, seeing Maggie is permanently damaged. They are completely again. She's being the subject of gossip. Dr. Kenn employs Maggie himself. When no family will take Maggie as a governess or companion, Dr. Kenn, defying public opinion, hires her to teach his children. So Dr. Kenn again comes out as support के how will Maggie support herself? Family नहीं support कर रही है, भाई नहीं support कर रहा है, father नहीं है. So she is like that, I will becoming a governess. So Dr. Kenn कहते तुम मेरे बच्चों को पढ़ाओगी. And though his motives are pure, society quickly speculates he might be courting her. Now again, you can say the scandal nature of Victorian age, जहाँ पे always the women were subject to humiliation, तो उसके everybody starts talking about Dr. Kenn and Maggie having an affair. The hypocrisy of the society. Social isolation deepens. Rumors swirl about Dr. Kenn and Maggie. Everyone talks about Dr. Kenn and Maggie कि इनका affair चल रहा है, इसको एकदम scandalous proof करना है. The misguests hope that Stephen will stay away. That Stephen still away will return to Lucy at Scarborough, fearing he might still marry Maggie. Meanwhile, Maggie grows more isolated, cut off from Lucy, Philip, and even the hope of redemption through understanding. So now, Mrs. जो Stephen की माँ होती है, she's also hoping that अब उसकी मैगी के साथ शादी ना हो, लूसी के साथ शादी हो जाए. And all those things, Maggie is again being isolated, और बहुत ही ज़्यादा वो again अपने isolation में जा रही है, alienate हो रही है. The secret visit. Maggie and Lucy reunite in a deeply moving scene. Up towards the end, finally, Lucy or Maggie come. They are meeting. Lucy secretly visits Maggie at night. The reunion is wordless at first, heavy with sorrow and tenderness. Maggie, racked with guilt, insists Lucy forgive Stephen and receive him back. Lucy, deeply affected, does not reply but expresses love, saying Maggie is better than she is. The final embrace is silent but profound. Okay, so over here, Lucy, the one जो कि हमेशा से इतनी innocent थी, naive थी, and she's a very nice girl. She visits Maggie, and Maggie is again saying that that please accept Stephen, and उसको clear कर रही है, and Lucy just hugs and say that you are better than me. In whatever sense that she's saying. Analysis अगर हम लोग देखें Maggie versus society, again we can say कि Maggie का पूरा character assassination. Very easy to do. Very easy to assassinate a woman's character, especially in that 19th century जहाँ पे women का respect was so fragile. उसका जो character था उसको annihilate करना, उसको question करना. Once you do that, then there's no stoppage to that. Once the rumors start, there's no stoppage to that. And that was happening with Maggie. Dr. Kenn's integrity. So Dr. Kenn का यहाँ पे we get to see a very strong character sketch of Dr. Kenn can be drawn considering this chapter, because Dr. Kenn, despite all odds, he is the one to take a stand against society. It's very difficult, guys. जब पूरा का पूरा लहर एक साथ जा रही होती है, but some one person stands with the truth. It's courageous, बहुत brave stand होता है, and we can see Dr. Kenn, despite the allegations, despite all the odds, he's still going ke nahi, Maggie is right. Then the night visit, female forgiveness and strength, the reunion between Lucy and Maggie is the emotional climax of the chapter. This transcends any social injury, romantic betrayal and personal pain. So Lucy का जो soft confession है, Lucy जो confess करती, that's very profound, and this marks a rare moment in literature where feminine grace and selflessness triumph over anything else. So Lucy and Maggie का जो यहाँ पे forgiveness scene है, जहाँ पे Lucy forgives Maggie, hugs him, that's a very important, beautiful scenes in the entire history of literature, because female forgiveness over such a matter where one man is involved. Okay, so this is like the height of, a female friendship, female camaraderie that you could say. Maggie's moral heroism grows. Maggie insists that Lucy forgives Stephen even as she suppresses her own grief is the monumental. So more than her own grief, Maggie wants Stephen and Lucy to be together. So it is not mere renunciation, but as an act of spiritual self-sacrifice and love, guilt, and redemption. And this chapter talks a lot about the love that is between the cousins, the love that Philip and Lucy also had, and the love that Lucy has for Stephen. So ultimately, there's love, guilt, and redemption that is so much about in this chapter. Then this chapter is a masterstroke of quite emotional power. Eliot does not dramatize reconciliation. She whispers it through hand, clap, shared silence, and unspeakable sorrow. तो यहाँ पे कोई बहुत ही full declarations of love नहीं है. We can see, Eliot के ये वाला story में there's a lot of drama, but it has not been dramatized. ऐसा नहीं कि बहुत ही declarations हो रहे हैं. It is overtly emotional. No, everything has been done in a very impassionate way. बहुत ही passionate way में नहीं, and that is George Eliot's writing, so mature, not extremely sentimental, but giving a very different perspective of this entire episode. Then you have book 7, chapter 5, The Last Conflict, Maggie's Final Temptation. Now over here, alone in the dead of night and storm, Maggie receives a desperate letter from Stephen Guest. He again, you can see again, Stephen Guest is pleading with her to reunite and abandon what he sees as a self-destructive renunciation. For hours, Maggie wrestles with the temptation to yield. But in the depth of her suffering, she reaffirms her moral strength. I will bear it and bear it till death. Okay, so again, Stephen is pursuing her that, go ahead with me. So she's a girl. She thinks, if I do go ahead with this, so this will happen. But उसको redeem करना है, उसको whatever that she has done, उसको redeem करना है, redemption चाहिए, and she's like, no, I will bear it till death. ये जो मेरा punishment है, I will bear it heroically, I will bear it till death. The flood begins. Suddenly, water rushes into the house. Over here, as we know sadly that Maggie will ultimately die, and this is the ending scene, wherein suddenly water rushes into the house. Maggie discovers the Floss has risen dramatically. Okay, so जो Floss river है वो एकदम से बढ़ गई है. She rouses Bob Jakin, helps his family evacuate, and jumps into one of the boats just before the house is submerged. A tidal current pulls her boat into the open flood water. Okay, so we know that it's all flood and things are going completely astray. किसी तरह Bob Jakin की family को rescue किया, but alone on the flood. Maggie is completely alone. Maggie's mind turns not to herself but to others, Tom and her mother. She fights against the current, praying she can reach the mill in time. Her suffering becomes fuel for selfless action. It's no longer about redemption for herself but saving the one she loves. Now, all that she wants is to save her mother and Tom, who are living on the mill. क्योंकि मिल ऑन द फ्लॉस, तो मिल जो फ्लॉस रिवर पे मिल भी है, एंड शी नोज के उसकी मम्मी उसके भाई दोनों है वहां पे, एंड शी इज लाइक किस मैं उनको पता, शी इज अगेन नॉट थिंकिंग ऑफ हरसेल्फ. द रीयूनियन विद टॉम, शी रीचेस द मिल वेयर ओनली टॉम रिमेन्स. ही इज स्टन्ड टू सी Maggie, realizing the immense danger sacrifice she has taken. When he utters the word Maxie, it signals forgiveness, reconciliation, and rediscovered love between brother and sister. So over here towards the end, it's a very emotional one. She somehow reaches the mill just to save her mother and her brother. But over here, जैसे टॉम देखता है, टॉम रियलाइजेस कि मैगी ने इतना बड़ा थ्रेट लिया, इतना बड़ा डेंजर लिया, wherein she swam across the entire river in such heavy tide, and just to save Tom and mother. Over here he says Maxie, in a प्यार से उसको बोलता है Maxie, and that is the moment that she realizes, okay, that I have been forgiven. The final embrace, they set out to rescue Lucy, but floating debris collides with their boat. In one final wordless moment, Tom clasps Maggie before they are both submerged. The siblings, estranged by pride and misunderstanding, are united again in death, just as they were in childhood. So ultimately, Tom and Maggie, they both die. They both, so they are not reunited in, we can say, in life, but in death. Tom and Maggie, they both reunite. Okay, so this is the end, guys. This is how the book ends. Martyrdom of moral will. Maggie's rejection of Stephen's plea is the true climax. Elliot presents moral choice not as abstract duty, but as a fierce personal sacrifice. Maggie's cross is self-denial, and her choice is not rewarded in life, but dignified by death. But over here, till the end, Maggie is thinking about the others. And her death is a huge sign that, the selflessness that she had, the care that she had, the affection that she had, and of course towards the end उसने आप को redeem कर लिया. Society कुछ भी कहे, but it is Tom who forgave her, and that was the most important for her. The flood as divine reckoning and mercy. Over here, nature in the form of flood becomes the agent of catharsis. It sweeps away gossip, judgment, and social cruelty of St. Aug. And over here, flood is a catharsis. मतलब flood was, you can say, the medium through which उसका जितना भी redemption उसको चाहिए था, उस flood ने दे दिया. She's now died. Whatever thing that she did, it has been redeemed by the flood that has been there. Elliot aligns Maggie death not just with punishment but with purification. She dies not disgraced but redeemed by love and heroism. So this is the heroism that she saw. Siblings love transcends all. Over here we see that Maggie and Tom's bond is the novel's most emotional core. Then, because हम लोग ने शुरुआत से पढ़ी है novel, so we know कि किस तरह से Tom and Maggie were so with each other. The final embrace without words, only shared recognition, transcends past bitterness. Finally, they embrace each other. Tom forgives Maggie, says Maxie to her, and jitna bhi past bitterness, that all goes away. Human isolation and the need for grace. Even Dr. Kenn eventually withdraws his support under social pressure. Maggie is truly alone. Her strength comes from within. And Greek tragedy meets Christian redemption. This is not a Victorian happy ending. Victorian novels were supposed to have happy endings, but nahi. Ye happy ending nahi thi. Maggie's death echoes classical tragedy, fate, suffering, and catharsis. What is catharsis? Catharsis is purification of emotions. जब एकदम कहते हैं ना कि जब हमारे इमोशंस का घड़ा भर जाता है तो वो छलकता है, तो कैथार्सिस में भी यही होता है कि व्हेन हम लोग के इमोशन जब इतने ज़्यादा होते हैं दैट वो we cry our heart out, and that is catharsis, purification of emotions. हमेशा रोने के बाद अच्छा लगता है, right? Because जितने भी आपके pent up emotions होते हैं, this is also the reason that catharsis is important, because it purifies you from within. Crying is important. So over here, again, Elliot imbues it with Christian imagery, the flood, the cross, and the embrace, the final unity. Her death is not failure, but transfigures everything. So Elliot finally gives to Maggie Talibas not justice, but immortality. So over here, she dies, but in that death, she wins immortality. She remains immortal, and she dies misunderstood. Yes, Maggie dies misunderstood, but not unworthy. Her life was short, sorrowful, and brave, and in her final act, she becomes unforgettable. In the final act, towards the end, that is what makes her immortal. जो उसने किया selflessly, she could have saved herself. वो बिल्कुल safe थी, वो अपने आप को बचा लेती, but she gave her life just to save the people that she loves. And this is how it ends. Conclusion, an analysis. The healing of the world and persistence of Floss. 5 years after this flood, life in St. Aug has largely returned to normal. Okay, so this flood was devastating, but now 5 years down, things have become normal, and the mills are working. The harvest is golden, and trade bustles on the river once more. Nature with her endless rhythms. But George Eliot reminds us that not everything lost can be restored. The scars in the landscape and in memory remain. Dorcourt Mill has been rebuilt. फिर से मिल बन गया Dorcourt Mill जो फ्लड की वजह से बिल्कुल बर्बाद हो गया था. And just a second. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So the graveyard is green, and yet near the resting place of the father lies another tomb, one that holds Tom and Maggie Tulliver's name, who died in each other's arms. Okay, and then two men visit the tomb: Stephen, who returns with a new love in time, and Philip, who comes always alone. So Stephen has not married Lucy, married someone else, and Philip, he visits a lot the graves of both the sisters and brother. Both carry with them the memory of Maggie as a defining presence of love. Upon the tomb पे क्या लिखा है? In their death, they were not divided. They were divided when they were living, but in their death, they were not divided. They reunited in their death. So final analysis, nature's repair versus human irreparability. So it was nature, it was the flood, जिसने इनको रिपेयर किया, इनका यूनिटी लाए. मैगी एंड टॉम्स यूनियन इन डेथ, दे वर द वन यूनाइटेड इन डेथ, जो कि मॉर्टल लाइफ में नहीं हो सकता था. दैट हैपेंड इन डेथ विच इज इमॉर्टल. And then the living bear the weight of the dead, and the living, the ones, death is painful not for the person who has gone. Death is very painful. Of course it is painful because the person ultimately dies, but for the people who are living, they are the ones who suffer the most. Philip and Stephen, who genuinely loved Maggie, the mother who genuinely loved her kids, her children, they are the ones to suffer. Elliot's humanism and tragic vision. Novel ends with reward but recognition of the beauty in sacrifice and the dignity in struggle. Final message Eliot ka kya hai? So this is the final message, guys. I'm reading this out loud. We may not all be offered resolution in life. हमें हो सकता है कि हमेशा कभी भी रिजॉल्व ना हो, हमें प्रॉब्लम्स ना सुलझे, रिजॉल्व ना हो, बट इन स्ट्राइविंग, इन लविंग एंड इन रिनाउंसिंग वी कार्व मीनिंग इनटू द वर्ल्ड. लेकिन जो हमारी कोशिश होती है, चाहे हमें उसका फल ना मिले, बट in loving, the love that we give, and in renouncing और sacrifice करना, छोड़ देना, ना वो चीज ना पाने की जिद, that is sometimes life. We carve meaning into the world, और इन्हीं से हमारा मतलब निकलता है. And sometimes like Maggie and Tom, we find the truest reconciliation not in words but in silence, eternal embrace. And this is how they die. So guys, with this I'm coming to an end of George Eliot's Mill on the Floss. This is how we study. This is how जितने भी notes मैंने अभी PPT पे देखे सब students को मिल जाएंगे. It's a very thick book. It's a very thick book, and I understand that given the time, a lot of preparation has to be done. I always encourage my students कि yes, पूरी बुक पे फोकस करें, बट इन केस देयर इज शॉर्टेज ऑफ टाइम, द नोट्स विल बी रियली वेरी हेल्पफुल फॉर ऑल ऑफ यू. बट स्टिल आई एनकरेज कि जो भी हमें मैटर मिलता है इस पे जे स्टोर पे जैसे बहुत अच्छे आर्टिकल्स होते हैं मिल ऑन द फ्लॉस के, जितने भी आपके हैं, read them as much as you can, and there will be guidance about all the question and answers also. So on Monday I will be discussing all the UPSC question answers जो कि मिल ऑन द फ्लॉस पे आ चुके हैं. क्या क्या पोटेंशियल क्वेश्चंस है जो आ सकते हैं, जितने भी कैरेक्टर स्केचेस हैं, व्हाट इज रिडेम्पशन, हाउ रिडेम्पशन इज परसीव्ड इन द नॉवल, हाउ मोरालिटी इज कंस्ट्रक्टेड इन द नॉवल, हाउ द एंडिंग हैपेंस, व्हाट इज catharsis, and all those questions will be addressed which can potentially come in the exam. All right. So with this, guys, I'm coming to an end. A very important announcement, guys, that the GS up 25th May को आपका exam हो जाएगा, and you will get to know that how was your exam. And if you think that you can go ahead with another excellent attempt जहाँ पे आप full on preparation कर सकते, so for all of you guys, without wasting even one day's time, 26th May को हमारा GS का बैच शुरू हो रहा है. Everyone, whoever, if you made up your mind कि UPSC निकालना है, go ahead with this. It's only for 33999. Use my code ARLIFE. You will get a very good discount, and इस पे you can go ahead with this. And over here, मॉर्निंग का बैच होगा गाइस, प्रीलिम्स का बैच. और अगर ऑन टॉप ऑफ दैट अगर सबने यूपीएससी के अपने सब्जेक्ट, ऑप्शन सब्जेक्ट डिसाइड कर लिया कि इंग्लिश लिटरेचर लेना है, सो गाइस फ्रॉम 2nd June माई बैच स्टार्टिंग, द कंप्लीटली न्यू बैच, जो कि लाइव क्लासेस देखने को मिलेगा आपको, वही लाइव क्लासेस, रिकॉर्ड लेक्चर्स मिलेंगे, जितने भी नोट्स हैं वो मिलेंगे। 2 जून से बैच शुरू हो रहा है। अगेन दैट बैच इज फॉर 14,999. यूज माई कोड AR Live, यूज दिस एज and you will get good discounts. Make sure that you're attending it, and I would love to see all of you in the classes. Join StudyIQ. हमारा 2024 का result was spectacular. I'm sure everybody knows this. It's all over social media. Everybody's talking about this, and there are excellent, very high ranking students जो हमारे StudyIQ से गए हैं. So if you want to check out the result, do check it out, and without wasting any time, join the GS course and join the options course, and I will be waiting for all of you. Thank you.